Hello, UK Crime Book Club. I'm here with Jonathan Peace, who I've interviewed several times. So you should all be used to seeing us together by now. But I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself anyway, for anyone who's not watched you yet, and tell us a little bit about Cut and Shut while I try to keep my lunch down.
Okay, well, hi everyone. As you said, I'm Jonathan Peace and I write the Louise Miller books. The latest one is, where is it? Here we go. Is Cut and Shut, which just came out last week on Tuesday the 24th. Third in the series. I'll keep that there in case there's any questions.
I was going to say, have you got the other two there as well to show off before you tell us about Cut and Shut?
Yeah, the very first one is Dirty Little Secret. And then the second one, which came out, both of these came out last year, is From Sorrow's Hold, both published by Hobeck Books, and obviously they do my books, and they do a whole range of fantastic crime, thriller, murder, mystery, suspense, cozy crimes. If you like crime, Hobeck have got it.
I do have to say as well, seeing as you've just held the books up, I was absolutely thrilled to be asked to provide a cover quote for one of them.
Yes,
so that was like, I've now had a book dedicated to me. I've had a few mentions and acknowledgements, and now I'm a cover quote. That's just,
yeah.
I was
you are
so
the
thrilled
cover
with that.
quote From Sorrow's Hold. So thank you very much.
Thank you for asking. But anyway, go on. Tell us about Cut and Shut.
Right. Cut and Shut, like I say, is the third in the series. All my books are set initially in the late 80s. First book starts 1987, and this one is 1989. Each book progresses on a year. Louise Miller is a detective constable in what was my hometown of Ossett. She is working alongside Elizabeth Hines, who was originally just a police constable. She's now a detective constable herself. And it begins with a horrific car crash in Dewsbury, well, just outside of Dewsbury. And then they start investigating that. The people whose car had been stolen, they get attacked. They are Bilal and Raja Wadi. And everything then starts to dovetail into each other as the story progresses.
And progress, it does at a massive speed. Just trying to see if I can see who the comments are from. So we've got Evening from Sarah Blackburn, Rebecca Collins, Fiona Webb, and Rebecca saying thank you for your quote, Sam. I was thrilled to be asked. Absolutely thrilled. So yeah, couldn't resist pointing that out. We've got some more hellos, so I'm just going to have a quick hello. Hi, Donna. Hi, Guy. So we have got lots to discuss. I was making notes today and I was thinking, there are so many things that I can't talk about. But one thing I will say, if I can, and be careful how you answer this as well, your overall arc has become a bit clearer to me by reading the third book. I know you're a meticulous planner, and I'm sure things change in the planning process, but just tell everyone how many books you've got kind of the idea for outlined.
Actually outlined, I've got 9 books. I've got what I call my phase 1. If you're into the MCU, have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And my phase 1 is the first 9 books, which will take us up to, hang on a minute, quick maths.
I'm not doing any maths on camera.
That'll take us up to 1995. So I had that planned out. That is basically set in stone. I know what's happening, and everything that happens has been seeded from book 1. However, you don't need to have read book 1 in order to enjoy each of the other books.
Agreed.
I wanted to read books 1, 2, and 3, because it's nice for you to do that. But when you get to book 9, you'll have seen how the story has arced for everybody, not just for Louise, but for
Yeah.
all the characters and some of the incidental characters as well, who may or may not be incidental in later books.
Do you think that starting the series when you did, late 80s, do you think that's going to help with this plan of longevity? I do, which is why I'm asking you what you think. Because with so many changes to life, to our culture in general, to policing, to how people are treated within different communities, I think that's going to be what gives you all of this kind of amazing progression where it's not going to be stilted because you've got so much time to work with. Is that kind of what you had in mind in the hope for the length of the series?
Yeah. When I first sat down and realised, okay, I've said this a few times before, but originally the book was a horror book, and then I turned it into a crime novel. But then I realised, well, there's things I want to write about in the future, and issues I want to discuss. And one of them, for example, is I want to do a series of books called, should I say what it is? Because I don't want anybody to steal the idea.
No. Keep bits of it to yourself.
Yeah, basically it's based around social media, and there's a quartet of books, all based around a different. Each one will be based around a murder that takes place, based around a social media platform. So those are going to happen, but they need to be set in 2020, 2021, whatever. But because of what's also happened in 2020 and 2021, I couldn't write that as my first books because you need to address those issues. So obviously the pandemic,
Yeah.
and other political aspects like the rise of Trump and Boris Johnson, all that kind of thing as well. It has to be tied into it. But in order to write about that properly, I think there needs to be a good amount of separation of time for everyone to absorb what's happened, process it, and then I can then write about it properly. So that's why I initially then jumped back to 1987 as my first one, because one, I love the 80s. I'm a huge 80s nerd, as you know.
As a man.
Yeah. And then I don't have to deal with things like the pandemic, and I don't have to deal with things like mobile phones and the internet and DNA. And also I can start looking at how, for example, the role of women in society has progressed over the years. Obviously, there's a lot more that needs to be done, but we can start from how bad it was back in those days to, yeah, it's still bad, but it's not as bad as it used to be. And
I think we could have varying discussions on that, couldn't we? Depending on different, places of work and different. We could really get into that, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to explore in each of the books. And that helped me then go, well, what do I need to, how do I go about planning this? I mean, I don't plan in massive details. My outlines are literally 3 or 4 pages of bullet points. Each bullet point is this chapter, that's what's going to happen. It's going to take place over 3 pages. That's going to be 4 pages. That's going to be 6 pages. It's not a massive amount of detail, not a massive amount of planning, but that's how I do it. So.
Thinking about kind of the time period that you're writing in now, so late 80s is where you're up to, and all of the procedure and things that are used, how much are you enjoying having that kind of limited compared to today? Like modern times now. How much are you enjoying having less to work with So it's not, you've not got DNA as such. Well, no, you have actually.
I think it was 99 is the first year DNA. Was it 80, 89? No, 90. I think it's
We
99.
should both know this off the top of our heads. It's not like it's not something we've not looked at a lot of times.
No,
But
I've
do
got it
you
on.
prefer writing about then, or do you think you're going to enjoy it when you get to present day? Do you think you're going to enjoy that more? How do you balance that?
All of it basically requires research. All of it does. Because I'm just as ignorant on modern day technology as past procedures. So all of it I'm having to research, which I'm loving.
Yeah.
So like say for example DNA started to come in, but I think the first, I think it's 99 was the first year that a crime was actually prosecuted using DNA
Right. Okay.
evidence. So I've got a long way to go yet. Obviously, steps were starting to be taken, so I'm slowly starting to introduce that, which is why I took one of the characters in the earlier books, Peter Danes, and made him in charge of the scene of crime team, so that he can then slowly start to say, "Oh, we've got this new piece of technology. Oh, we're now getting a new lab. We're now getting a new doohickey. I don't know what it is yet because I haven't researched it." When I'm writing the outline, I'll say this is what I want to have happen, and then I'll put in bold, research such and such, find out about this. Or when I'm writing the story and doing a draft, I'll get to a certain point and then I'll put in, I don't know this, find this out, and then I'll come back to it in later
Yeah.
drafts.
Peter Danes is a really good character now you've brought him up, because you've plunked him in a role that was kind of almost created for him in the station, and you can see through the book the kind of the organisational skills that he's bringing to things and how thorough he is with making sure things happen the right way. It seems, his eyes are everywhere. He's
Yeah,
really observant. He's really picking up on things, but he seems like a really great guy to work with as well. So it's a character that really, kind of jumps off the page. He's really likable.
he's starting to get a little louder than I originally planned. Initially, he was just going to be in the background, and every now and again, he would pop up and he's there on the scene. But again, because this is all progressing, and at the minute they're in their small little Prospect Road police station, eventually they're going to move into a bigger police station, which is what happened in Ossett. It now has a big police station, and there's going to be a dedicated crime lab. So then the turnaround isn't going to be 1 or 2 weeks or 3 weeks for forensic analysis. It's going to be within hours or maybe a day at the tops. And again, having that character so that Louise can, or Hines can then go, oh, well, somebody to bounce off of, and he can then be giving the briefing on that kind of aspect.
Yeah.
And it's not Louise who's having to do it all the time. Otherwise, I think it could get a bit boring if it's just one character all the time.
I don't know. I think Louise is pretty great. Hines as well. Talking about the buildings now, I don't know about near you, but near me there's an old police station. The building's still there. I'm not quite sure what it's used as now. It was a PCSO hub, I think, for a while, but quite a small building. And now we've got a really modern police building that's a couple of miles up the road, if that. I'm wondering how much the buildings have changed and the usage of the buildings, because they must all have the basics the same. So kind of, the cells, and maybe now they've got a cafeteria. They might have just had a kettle on a table before, who knows? So what have you noticed so far that's changed?
Well, the original place that I set this new CID unit in on Prospect Road was actually the police station in Ossett. It really was it is actually there. I mean,
Yeah.
the building's still there now. I think it's been used as offices for something. And it was a 3-story building. Took a bit of, artistic license with it and gave it a basement for the cells and an extra floor that was just used for storage, which then became the temporary crime lab. But then when it becomes the other side of us, it actually becomes a large modern day building. There's the swipe to get in, and there's a lot more computers being used, and
Yeah. I
interview
never thought
monitors.
about the security changes over the years. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
originally you literally would just walk in. It was just it was just an old 17th century house, just literally just a house. So you'd walk in, there'd be a living room, there'd be a sitting room, there'd be a kitchen. The kitchen became a temporary holding cell. The living room was the main pen, and then Manby's office was the living room area. And then that all, again, artistic license added on a extension, and it all became one big area.
Yeah. I've just made a quick note then, thinking about fact versus fiction. So I know that in Cut and Shut, in the acknowledgements at the end, I kind of half answered my question, that you have used real events as a broad overview, but you fictionalized the actual event that's in the book. So there was something that happened, but that's not exactly what has taken place in the book. How do you match up fact versus fiction, and what do you decide to leave in and take out? Is there some sort of plan with it of what's too much detail and what's just artistic license, like you say, creative license, to make it what you need it to be for your story?
Yeah. When I had obviously had the original idea of what was happening in Cut and Shut, which is it deals basically with hate crimes.
Yeah.
And then when I was doing the research, I found out that there was actually a race riot that took place in Dewsbury in 1989. So it was like, well, the book is set in 1989. I want to deal with hate crime. Let's put the two together. So I did a lot of research into what actually took place, and if I say that, is it going to give anything away?
Don't give anything away. This is dicey.
Yeah, it's quite tricky. Basically, in 1989, a real race riot took place in Dewsbury. White parents were taking their children out of the local schools because they thought that the area was being, I'm going to put in bunny quotes, taken over by
We have to be careful how we word this, because we don't want it taken off air.
Yeah, it is.
It's horrendous. It's horrendous, the things. There's a good reason why we can't use the words. Thank goodness that it's being policed better online. But at the same time, it does limit just how much we can discuss of the story.
Yeah. So that all really happened. So I basically wrote down, race riot takes place, a car gets stolen, it's linked, and then the rest is basically made up. Everything else is made up.
It's good to know how you did that. Just kind of a hint of what really happened, but actually what you needed for your story was something quite different.
Yeah, because obviously I didn't want to get sued. So I didn't want to have real names and real people and real locations. So my race riot mainly takes place within Dewsbury city centre. It didn't take place there. A pub did get, if I say that, it's going to give it something.
You've used the pub in the book.
There is a pub in the book.
But you've got a real pub with a different name.
Yeah.
And
it's in a slightly different location. I've moved it about 1.5 miles away from where it actually was. and like I say, the rest kind of takes place like it does. But obviously, I've kind of added my own little spin to it, shall we say?
Your own JP twist. Oh my word. Kaz has asked, would he make a role-playing game of your books? Now, interestingly, Kaz normally asks about graphic novel, as you know. We've already answered that one, so we need to twist the questions. And a role-playing game of your books is perfect for you. I don't know how that would work. You'll have to explain that to me. Do you want to do that?
I don't see how. I mean, you kind of.
Does it kind of mean that you'd have to give people other alternate goals? I kind of think back to when I was reading Choose Your Own Adventure novels as a kid.
Oh, Fighting Fantasy. I love them. I've got several of them on my shelf. Yeah.
There's some on the shelf here behind me, I'm sure, or they might be on the kids' bookshelf in the front room. But yeah,
Creature of Habit can never complete it.
But that might be a good thing. Then you've got alternate turnouts for your characters.
To be honest, I can't think of any crime-related role-playing games. So Kaz might be onto something here. I mean, you've got like Call of Cthulhu, which have their investigators, and they're obviously investigating different kind of mysteries. Right. I've never heard of this Shadowrun, which has kind of Matrix level kind of investigations in that, but I've never heard of a crime RPG.
There you go, that's something for you to pitch.
Yeah. Me and Kaz might have to have a chat.
Cut Kaz in. She also wants to know, what have been your reads of the year so far? We're only just into February, so that's an interesting one.
My reads. I'm currently reading Lynn Anderson's Time for the Dead.
You've been working your way through this series for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, this is book 14, I think. I've got 2 more to go. The Rona McLeod series, absolutely fantastic. If you've not read them, anybody who's watching, highly recommend them. I'm a very slow reader.
I think it's just that you're a very busy man.
Yeah, I mean, I could find a bit more time. I could, stop watching Star Trek: The Next Generation and read a bit more, I suppose. But yeah, I'm working my way through that. You can't beat it.
And Sarah Blackburn said, why did you decide to write about a female detective? There's a lot of road in Louise Miller, isn't there? What's the word I'm looking for? A lot of, not road, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of.
I don't know what you're saying.
This is why I shouldn't drink water. A lot of mileage in Louise Miller.
Yeah.
In her and in the practicality of her in that job at that time. There's so much mileage there.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been drawn to writing female characters. I don't know why. I always have been. Screenplays I've done, they've always been led by a female character. When I was initially writing the horror story, that was again a female character. She was a book reviewer on YouTube, and it just seems to fit perfectly. And then because I wanted to set it in 1987, it just seemed perfect that it would be a female character again, because there was so much I could dive into with regards to the misogyny of the time, and a lot of other social issues as well, all based around the fact that she's a woman.
We have Sarah's asked as well, do you keep notes on your characters?
I really should. I've got maybe 3 or 4 lines, but I'm always having to either pick up a book and read through and find out something, or open up a previous manuscript and put in a search so I can try and find details. But I really should. I should do more of that, but I don't do enough.
I think when you first start, you think you'll remember everything, but as you get into each new book, it gets harder and harder to have time to go back to make notes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a spreadsheet now which says when they were born and specific things which I know are going to happen in future books. So I know I can start seeding a few things for those as well. But yeah, I should do more. Excuse me.
I did try to have a look. Somebody is very helpfully told us DNA 1987 in US, September 2020 in UK. Not sure what that one is. But as soon as I went to try and look on Facebook to see who the Facebook user is, it kicked me out, made me wobble and change my camera. So I'm not touching anything now. So I'm sorry if that if you all saw that. Karen, hello Karen. Karen is our newest addition to the Author Chat team, who did a first interview with Sam Blake last night. So I hope that went well. Somebody, Sarah Sedlin Anderson, is on a TBR author list.
Highly recommend.
Somebody's asked, do you find it hard to read other writers when you are read other writers when you're writing? And it was Guy commenting on the DNA mystery. Okay, thanks, Guy.
Not really. I've only ever had one issue when I started reading somebody's book, and they have a character which is, and I'd already written the first two books, and they'd come out, and then I started reading this particular writer, and they have a character named exactly the same as one of my characters, and I was like, oh, should I rename my character? Should I go back and rename this particular person? And then I couldn't read any more of her books.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to then start to get influenced by how they write that particular character, even though it's total apples and oranges, totally different. So yeah, that was the one issue I had. But no, I love reading other people's at the minute, like say Lynn Anderson. Then I've got Ian Rankin's Rebirth to get through, and the rest of my Colin Dexter's Morse books. They're my next ones to go through. Then Peter James's books, and then I've got Brian Price's books to go through. And I've got so many. Brian
Price is excellent as well. And they're all a great list, everyone you just said. Donna asked, what does it say on the whiteboard behind you, JP? Now, Sarah's already answered, but I'm going to let you answer because we wondered how long it would take somebody to ask that. Got through nearly half an hour.
We got there. We got there. Yeah, that's my dry whiteboard for things. So I had to cover it up because I didn't want to wipe everything off or take it off. I was too lazy to do that. So it basically says super secret stuff, no peeking. That's all I'm going to say.
So when did Cut and Shut come out? What did you do for launch day? So what exact date was it?
It came out last Tuesday the 24th of
January.
January, yeah. I didn't really do much for launch day. The blog had started, I believe. Normally, for the other two, I'd planned things like going live myself on Facebook or on my website or anything, something like that. But I think things have been a bit tricky the last few months, and I've just not found the time.
But that's why I get to do it instead.
Yeah. So let you take all the stuff.
I think
it went really well from what I've been told. People seem to like it, which is really good. And the reviews are starting to come in, and I'm really pleased by them. So yeah, no, really good.
Somebody has said, I'm assuming it's Donna, I wouldn't want to let you down by not asking about the whiteboard in the background. Donna said you promised her to JP, so I think that's you with another interview lined up.
Oh, cool.
Rebecca wants to know what the map of the UK is for, and does the red and blue indicate political regions? Now, I can see as well that it's got some green on it as well, I think.
That's
something darker. We
that's
don't get
actually-
into politics,
No,
and it's why I'm not looking at Guy Hale, one of Guy Hale's comments. He should know better. I'll tell him off later.
It's definitely not politics. That's to do with my day job.
Fair enough. Sarah's saying cut and shut is great. It is. We were talking before we came on, and there are things that I will not say online while we're live for fear of spoilers. I have got some notes to kind of things that I've written down that I couldn't tell you online that I thought were brilliant, but I can tell you afterwards. So going over it again today was really interesting. But I will say there were moments where I winced, and that I didn't eat any tea today because I'd read it again today. I was lucky enough to read it as an ARC, but at the same time, I bought it on Kindle Unlimited today and read it because I always try and find a way to pay the authors for the freebies because it shouldn't be free, should it? But yeah, there was so many. I will leave an actual proper review as well.
Oh, cheers.
There's so much. I mean, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the humour, and I actually made a note of one of the quotes because there was no way I was going to remember the exact line, and it was, there it is. Such a way with words. Broad Owler Estate had spread like a bruise across the backside of Ossett. I just loved it. It's just one of the funny lines that I could read out because it's not a spoiler. So the Broad Owler Estate is kind of like a dodgy old council estate. We're not slagging off council estates. I live on one. There's nothing wrong with a council estate.
I live on one.
But I have to wonder as well, does a comment like that, is that something you come up with, or do you overhear snippets of conversation in places that feed into the book as well for an overall feeling of the time?
A lot of them do. A lot of things do. Obviously, when I go out places and I listen to people's conversations, and if somebody says a great turn of phrase, I'll bring my note back, and jot it down, and I'm having that one. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to say that one's mine. I like that.
Oh, it's funny. When you guffaw, like you snort, laugh at something when you read it.
It made me chuckle. Yeah. I'd like to do a series of books actually based just purely on Broad Owler, because some of it's based on an estate I know from Ossett when I grew up, and some of it is actually based on the estate that I now live on, from just sat here and looking out and watching the kind of people who are walking around and who own the estate and how they act with everybody else. And I'd like to do something set in the 70s and how the estate rises up and some of the characters that evolve on there. So, yeah.
Really important question for you. What do you use as a bookmark? I'm asking this because Louise Hines uses, I think it's a playing card in this one. I'm currently using actually a UKCBC bookmark. So we've got...
Me too.
Oh my word, snap. That's what I'm using at the minute. But things I've used in the past, I don't use receipts because I find they're smudgy, depending on the ink used on them. But I will grab a Post-it note or a bit of paper or an envelope. I believe somewhere in my house there is a Kindle in a book as a bookmark. I lost my Kindle. You know how often I lose it. I've not seen it for about 18 months. So, yeah. Do you always use a bookmark or do you grab the nearest thing?
I always use a bookmark. Well, that one. I've also got a dragon one, which I've had for about 20 odd years now. I actually bought it in Boston Airport in America, and I use that as a bookmark. And failing that, I'll just thumb over the page.
Interview over.
It's a book. You can thumb the page. It's not a precious thing.
Oh my word. I'm not sure about our friendship anymore. I laughed because Donna said, I have millions of bookmarks and never use one. If you're a page bender as well, Raving Words, Donna.
All you do is you take the page and you just
Of
bend
course,
it
shut.
like that, and there you
Rebecca,
go.
have words with your
Oh.
author. Oh my lord. No. Sarah wants to know, if you do write about the 70s, will you talk about the power cuts, politics? Let's not get too deeply into politics, but do you have an idea of what you'd cover in it?
They'd obviously have their place in it. Yeah, definitely. And obviously, I mean, the politics do come into everything. It's just that's life. That's what happens. We're all grown-ups. Politics happens. But I don't say that's a right
Yeah,
politics.
that's true. You do show all sides of different feelings and thoughts.
Everybody's got their own opinion. And what somebody believes is just as valid as what somebody else believes. Then we move into areas of the grey.
I think that's why we don't do it on the book club, because it's so divisive.
Exactly.
And we just want to talk books. That's it.
Yeah. But if I didn't talk about it in the books, then I'd be doing a disservice to the Times, and it wouldn't be authentic. It wouldn't be realistic.
I agree completely.
So, yes, politics will be in there, but that's just the way it is. Yeah.
You do deal with all of the subjects with an honesty and a realism, but you also use humour and irony. There was a line right in the beginning of the book, and I am wondering if I wrote it down. I've probably ripped it out and made a different note somewhere. Luke, who is a character who we first meet right at the beginning of the book, said he doesn't like non-whites moving to the area, but he doesn't want to see them hurt. So this is Luke. That's not what he says. That's kind of who he is.
Yeah.
And he said all they had to do was go somewhere else and there won't be any trouble. If he had the chance of moving to warmer climates, he'd jump at it, kind of not understanding the irony in his own words at all. And you've managed that throughout, with varying points of view.
Yeah, I mean, when I was doing the research into it, and I mean, I spent a year researching this one because obviously it's a very divisive topic. And one of the things, I wanted to do was, like I've just said, was make it authentic, and not say, not come down on one side or the other, and try and show both sides, so both sides can try and get an understanding of each other, because that's the only way that you can actually move forward, is by, you might not like what people are saying, but you have to understand it. So a good way of getting people to understand, and a good way of getting people to educate themselves, is through humor. And that's what I tried to do without it being preachy. So.
Wasn't preacher, and there was even as we're talking about it, I'm looking into the distance and seeing myself as though I'm stood looking over Dewsbury Marketplace, stood watching what's happening in front of me. And you can really visualize it from what you've written, and it is an onlooker seeing both sides of it. I could just be a person walking past and hearing what both sides have got to say while being removed from it, which is a perfect balance, I thought.
Well, that means I've done it right then.
You've done your job. Good. Yeah, absolutely. I believe it's Rebecca saying, sorry, JP, you need educating in how to treat a book. Page folding. No. I believe it was Guy who said, for a bookmark, air-dried lark's tongue cured in aspic. Perfect bookmark. Well, why wouldn't you?
Nice.
That won't damage the pages either. And Donna's saying she's got some UKCBC bookmarks to give away in Brighton. So that's exciting as well. The booze culture is something else I wanted to talk about. Now, you'd hope it's not the same anymore, but the booze culture in the 80s and probably into the 90s was something to behold.
Yeah.
You know, people going for pints at lunchtime. I remember, can I say this? I think most of them would be retired now, and it's not like it was a secret. Teachers going for a pint on a Friday afternoon in my school.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and who could blame them with children like me to look after in a school?
Yeah.
So,
I remember when I was at school in Gawthorpe, we'd go to at lunchtime, we'd go to the local snooker club. We'd play a game of snooker, and several of the teachers would come in. They'd go to the bar, have a few pints, play a couple of games, and we'd all go back together. So yeah, no, it happens.
madness. And that, in a way, not the drinking, but maybe being in the same place and seeing each other in a different light. Maybe back then that helped with some of the behaviour issues. It wasn't a them and us sort of teacher-student thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I've kind of got penciled in for a later book. I'm not quite sure. I don't think it's going to be within this first 9 book story arc. I think it'll be in the next one. But I definitely want to have a look at something like that.
There's a debate about bookmarks going on now. And we've got, I mean, can you tell us anything at all yet about book 4?
How
far in are you? Have you started it? Started it.
The 6th time I'm this far into it. So that's the title.
Silly Blades.
So that's where I'm up to now. And again, this is the 6th draft of it. It's a tricky one to write, and it follows on. Obviously, it's in the next year, but the events do follow on from what happens in book 3.
So you can't really tell me anything.
I can't go into a great amount of detail. The theme, each book has a theme. So book 1 was about family abuse. Book 2 was about teen suicide. Book 3 was about hate crimes, all cheery stuff. So book 4 is about anxiety and depression. That's all I can really say without spoiling anything of book 3. And it's been quite tricky to write because I actually suffer from anxiety and depression myself. And the last 2 or 3 months, I don't mind saying, I've had a major setback going into my own anxiety and depression. So going through that episode while writing about anxiety and depression has been quite tricky.
I can imagine.
Shall we say. So I got through a draft, 100,000 words, and I read through it, and it just didn't work. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, but I don't think they were in the right order, and the events just didn't work right. So I deleted it back down to about 20,000 words and started again. And then I got to about 40,000 words and sent it to Rebecca and Adrian at Hobeck, my publishers, and they gave me some great feedback. I sent it to a couple of other people. They gave me some good feedback. So I'm now working through it again. So we're getting there. It's taking its time, and because I'm trying to set up things which happen in books 7, 8, and 9. It's making sure it all fits properly and is an entertaining read, so somebody can just pick up book 4 and it has its own narrative structure as well.
I think me and Rebecca, I think this is Rebecca, have got, oh no, it's Guy. Sorry, Rebecca. We've got the same question but from different points of view. So Guy wants to know, did you find writing about anxiety in any way cathartic? And I want to know how you found using the emotion. I find that quite difficult to put that kind of anything that's real into a book, anything that I'm feeling into a book. And I know it would help the writing if I did, but I find a very, very much a block that I'm going to have to work through at some point. It won't be now, but at some point. I mean, we both talked about anxiety and depression. It's not a secret that I've had it as well. Still suffer from anxiety, get a bit gabby when I'm feeling anxious. So if I'm ever talking a mile a minute, then that's probably why. But is it cathartic? Was it hard? Was there an obstacle to overcome in getting that realism?
It's because writing from a particular character's point of view, who is suffering an anxiety attack, having gone through them, when I was writing it, I then started. It basically triggered it.
Right.
So it helped because I could draw on exactly how I was feeling and then put that into it from their point of view. But it didn't help me personally. So I had to then take a step back from it and then go, right, we're done for a while. I'm going to go away and paint some toy soldiers or go watch some Star Trek and whatever. But I think it will it will mean that when the book is finished, it'll be a better book for it. And it is good to get it down on the page as well and get my feelings that I'm suffering down, onto the page. And it's hard, but it's, it at the end of the day, it's, it's the nature of it. And hopefully it'll resonate with people as well and realize, as you can tell, I'm now starting to stutter over what I'm trying to say.
I do that all the time. I think that's the anxiety, and then you try and slow yourself down, and then your mind gets in the way. And in the comments, I've got people taking the mickey out of me saying I must be anxious all the time. Yeah, probably.
But I think in the long run, it'll make for a better book, which is why I'm now not kicking myself thinking, well, this should have been handed in January. And yes, I could have just sat down and churned out a book in 30, 40 days and handed it in and gone, done. But it wouldn't have been a good book. So if it's handed in by May, it's handed in May. If it's handed in September, it's September. If a book now doesn't come out until next year, a book doesn't come out until next year, but it'll be a good book because I've taken the time and made sure that it's authentic and that it's true to people's experiences. And it, it makes for a good story because, I want it to be entertaining at the end of the day. I mean, the books, people are starting to now see a pattern that the books are quite dark in places.
Just a smidge.
A little smidge. And book 4 will be a darker book than you've had so far, even more so than book 3. So, yeah, I want to make sure it's done right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Rebecca agreeing. Rebecca's saying, we'd rather you didn't churn, we can wait. I'm sure that's Rebecca commenting. Yeah,
no, they are fantastic. I mean, the initial plan was 3 books a year, and I was perfectly happy to do that, and I had a schedule set in place and a work ethic. So I was at my desk every morning by 5 o'clock, and I'd get my pages down and I'd get through it, and I've never missed a deadline up until now. But then obviously the cost of living crisis has all kicked in, and I've had to get a day job, which I'm really enjoying now. I'm doing this, and it slowed my process down. So instead of my 6 to 8 pages a day, I might get 1 or 2 pages now. So yeah, we'll get there.
Of course you
It'll
will.
be worth waiting for.
It will be worth waiting for. They always are.
And it'll be a bigger book as well.
Leslie said it's better to delay and put out the best book you can, as you very much judged by the latest book, and you are judged by the latest book. Rushing it just seems like the worst thing you could do.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the dark topics, and your relationship with Hobeck. So, and maybe Rebecca or Adrian can answer this as well. When you're writing, there's so many editors and publishers, rightly or wrongly, removing certain things from their books. So there might be topics that people are a bit afraid to touch. You know, they say they want something different, but then something different's presented and they go, actually, yeah, no, we want something similar, because it's too big a risk. So is there a fine line there, do you think, for you and for the publisher?
For me personally, there's no fine line. There's no line I won't cross. But then again, doing an authentic, respectful,
Yeah.
truthful way. From the publishing side, they have to take a lot more into consideration. And so far, we've not had to have that discussion. Book 5, I know Hobeck don't know what the topic is for book 5.
Do we want to be a fly on the wall for that conversation?
I know we're going to have a conversation because of the topic it's going to deal with.
Right.
In 2 areas. But that's a conversation we'll have later and obviously privately, and we'll take it from there. I don't think they'll have a problem with it because I think that they'll trust me. I think they'll wait to see how it's executed. But there will be a conversation they'll need to have, we'll need to have for book 5.
Some comments from Rebecca there. Because they're quite small, they can take risks, and authenticity rocks. So I think, and she's all ears, and they do trust you, which is good. And you can see that comes across in the writing. It doesn't feel like anything's held back, but nothing's gratuitous. Nothing's there for the sake of the shock value rather than the sake of the story. It's all very much feels like you're looking at real people doing things.
Yeah, that again, that's what I aim to do, and they do give me great feedback. Adrian gave me some fantastic feedback on I think about 40,000 words of whatever draft it is for book 4, which I've now incorporated into this 7th draft now. But none of it was, we don't want you to do this and we don't want you to do that. It was all about structure and story and pacing and things. So, we'll just have to see what happens.
I'm conscious that we've got just about 5 minutes left. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was your use of writing from different ages. Now, I find that, I'm going to use Rebecca's word, authentic. I think it must be a very hard thing to be inside so many people's heads, particularly when you're looking at teenagers, and you're looking at teenagers from, decades ago as well.
So I'm going to have to disappear in 1 second. I'm very, very sorry.
That's absolutely fine.
Can we?
We can. So
yeah, I'm really sorry.
Thank you very much to everyone who has joined us tonight. Thank you. It's been lovely having you here with us, JP. And I look forward to next time and whatever you're going to do to my insides next time.
Thank you very much. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to really, really dash.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thanks.